Sadly, this week, our boy Tom isn't hanging with us, but we have a very special guest. Want to say hello, Dayelle?
Hey.
So Dayelle is actually Tom's wife, so we are getting the better half of this combo, in my opinion. Hey, Dayelle, what does coffee, beautiful Connecticut inns, fast talking, a mother-daughter combo, very quirky characters, and a very handsome diner owner all have in common?
It's definitely Gilmore Girls.
That's right, and that's what we're going to be talking about today on Can We Talk About?
I'm turning numb.
Keep moving.
Are my feet still attached to my body or they snap off coming down the stairs?
They're still there.
Why are we out here?
Take a deep breath.
What?
Do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I smell snow.
What?
It's coming. I always know. I can smell it, and I'm never wrong.
Wasn't in the forecast.
It's just my favorite time of the year. The whole world changes color.
I think I'm blacking out.
Flakes, flurries, swirls, crystals, whatever form it comes in, I'll take it. We go back, Snow and me. We have a beautiful history.
Saw two forecasts, neither of them mentioned snow. Cold, but no snow.
Sleigh rides, ice skating, snowball fights. I'll even take curling. God, I love curling.
Hans Cranston on Channel 6 said it would be dry. Kimmy Liston live at 5, same thing, no snow, nothing.
Hot cocoa, hot toddies. Best time of the year.
Hey, Dayelle.
Hey, Amanda.
So, can we talk about Gilmore Girls?
Yes, let's talk about Gilmore Girls.
You guys might notice that beautiful voice is not that of Tommy, but his gorgeous wife, Dayelle. And she has a little bit more of an obsession with Gilmore Girls than he does, so she's a much better guest for today's podcast. So, Dayelle, tell me, did you start from day one? Are you a day one Gilmore Girls fan, CW?
You know, I wish I was, but I was not. Growing up in a house where we couldn't watch certain things because they were a little too adult, so I couldn't watch Gilmore Girls, but I would sneak and watch Gilmore Girls.
Of all the dirty things you could do, young lady.
Exactly. No, but I did probably start watching it like my senior year of high school. So it was a couple years in at that point, but and I actually hadn't seen like the first couple seasons. I joined in later on in the season.
Oh,
which was
I feel
hard.
like that's very brave. That's very brave. A lot happens in the beginning.
It does.
There's some groundwork laid. I don't know if I was. I mean, I asked you that question. I was like, oh my God, what is my answer? I want to say I was.
Yeah.
My sister and I watched it, but I don't think I was. I think that I just want to be a diehard fan, but I think I'm like you, not because I wasn't allowed to. My parents were kind of like, you're learning. You're like, don't do that. But it was definitely one of those things that once we were obsessed with the CW, like One Tree Hill, all of those shows, Vampire Diaries, whatever was on, we were watching. I think it was more like Buffy time, right?
Yeah.
Like this was out when like Buffy was on.
Buffy was another like huge. My friends, huge Buffy fans, again, wasn't allowed to watch it. So I couldn't experience it with my friends, but like deprived. I was very deprived. But Buffy though is one of the shows that I've still yet to see, which is surprising because I'm a huge like Vampire Diaries, any vampire-esque story I'm in.
We should do Vampire Diaries, but
yes.
Sorry, we're just this whole episode will be Dale and Amanda planning episodes without Tom.
Exactly. All these shows that I forced him to watch one episode. Yeah. And he was like, nope.
That's what Henry does. Although I will say in the background, he will hear Gilmore Girls and be like, oh, God, Rory's such a brat. Isn't that so? Actually, Tom texted me that earlier. He's like, Rory is the worst. And when I first started watching the show, had to be like middle school, high school time. I thought she was the best. I was like, oh my God, she's so smart and so beautiful. And she never has to wear makeup. And all the hot boys like her. And now I watch it and I'm like, ooh. Wow, spoiled little brat.
She's the worst. She really is the worst. Like her character is just everything you don't want to be. She is that.
Agreed. And I'll say if you've been living under a rock and you have not watched Gilmore Girls, I really don't know what to tell you because it is my comfort show. I watch it I rewatch it probably every fall. It just feels like the leaves start to change. I'm like, ooh, I have to go to Stars Hollow.
Literally September 1st, Gilmore Girls is on.
Same.
And I went through the entire show from the very first season to the reboot season, and now I've started rewatching it again.
Yeah. So I ended probably about 2-3 weeks ago from the September 1st when I started till then, because it's just, and there's something so comforting. I know that people say that if you have anxiety, you have like shows that you don't really have to watch, so you rewatch them. But there's something so comforting about that show.
It is. It like gives you all
so
the fuzzy feelings. For some reason, it's just one of those things that like if I'm having like a stressful week or there's a lot going on, like I will come home, make a cup of coffee and put Gilmore Girls on. Even if it's like while I'm making dinner, doing laundry, cleaning the house, doesn't matter. It's just in the background. And I'll like stop what I'm doing in like in between things and like just watch it for a few minutes because it's like a good episode. And then I'll go back to doing whatever I'm doing.
I do the same thing. And my sisters are the same way. And I think we found my mom is a very fast talking. She had me when she was 18. So she's like a very fast talking, quick witted lady. And I'm pretty similar to her in that people sometimes are like, I have no idea what you said. You need to slow down. And so I loved that part of it. And I think I was like, oh, this is just like my mom and I, although I was not, they are not super rich. My grandparents are not super rich. We did not get full rides to Yale, but I think
a car for your Sweet 16. You didn't get that.
A Prius back then. I can't even imagine what those things cost. A Prius in 2004.
But also,
but when you
really,
watch it,
a Prius, really?
I know. They're multi-millionaires and they get her a Prius because Leonardo DiCaprio drives it. You know how like Emily gives it to Rory and she's like, it's what Leonardo DiCaprio drives.
Yes.
Who is your favorite character now that you're an adult?
That's a hard question. I go through like phases. I definitely like, I would have said if you had asked me like years ago, it would have been Rory. But
Same.
like as I've gotten older and I've rewatched it so many times, my two favorite characters are definitely Emily Gilmore is one of my favorite characters. I love her. And then I also love Sookie. Like she's kind of
such
like
a good friend.
She is. She's such a good friend, and she's such a good friend to Lorelai. Like to the point of like Lorelai doesn't deserve her, and like she's just. I love her. She's just she's one of my favorites. I really enjoy it, which is surprising because it would always have been Rory and Lorelai would have been my favorites, but I don't know. Emily and Sookie are my go-to.
I will agree 100% with Emily. She is like. I forget the exact line, but the scene where she's arguing with Richard and she says, buy me a boa and drive me to Reno and I'm open for business is like, I love her. She's she's the best. And her delivery, I think all of them, the writing and the delivery is so good. It's such good comedy, but also really feel good. And I think that one of my favorite parts of this show, rewatching it, is the amount of celebrities that have like quick little parts. I'm like, oh my God, that's Max Greenfield from Newbert.
Or like John Hamm pops in there for like a little blip. And I'm like, Tom, John Hamm's in here. You're going to like the show now. But he's there for like a minute and Lorelai hates him.
He's a rich bastard. I love that. Nick Offerman, like one of my favorites of all time, plays like the creepy pervert brother.
But he's such a good character.
He's so good.
It's so funny and just like random, but I love it. I was just watching actually last night. I was watching the episode when, Sookie's husband, I always forget his name, Jackson. When his cousin comes to stay and they go on a double date, Lorelai and Rune go on a double date. Rune. He's such a funny, like there's always, anytime Jackson's in it, like there's always just like a random character that comes in with him. That's just great. Incredible. It's so funny and awkward and perfect.
And he was only meant to be a one-timer.
Yeah. You know what's funny is I feel like a lot of the characters were kind of set up to just be like a couple episodes and then that was it, but they became staple. Like I couldn't imagine Gilmore Girls without Luke. And I was just reading this thing about how Luke was supposed to be Daisy. Like it
I
was supposed to be
saw
a female.
A girl.
Yeah.
For one episode,
I can't
right?
imagine. Yeah.
Oh, I'll tell you right now, when I rewatch it as an adult, I'm like, yo, Luke is fire. Oh my God, he is hot.
He's beautiful. Especially in the first couple seasons. He is and I think like, he only gets better with time. Like he just ages so gracefully and he gets like a little salt and peppery as the season continues. Yes.
Oh,
I don't know what Lorelai just kept him on the back burner for so long, but he was the runner up always.
Always. I liked Christopher. I thought he was funny. Jason was annoying. Max was like, ugh.
Max was so
Max
boring.
was just
he was so
Max was just vanilla.
Yeah. Yes, that's a perfect description of him. Yes.
He was vanilla. But I think my favorite would always have been Luke. Always. Did you know that Jess was only written in the show as a distraction to hold them off for another season?
No.
Yeah, I just read that.
I did not know that. I love Jess. Jess is one of my favorite Rory loves. I hate Dean and always hated him from day one. I was not a Dean fan, which is interesting because like, he's such a bad boyfriend and just like just controlling and like very easily jealous and just like there were so many things that were like no-nos when you would see him in. And you're just like, no, you don't want a guy like that.
And it's so funny because watching it, he's like supposed to be the hottie, right? And I'm sure I thought he was the hottie. But then when Jess came on the scene, I was like, oh, there it is. My penchant for bad boys. It's arrived.
Yep.
Why, hello.
Yep. There's, no. And then like they kind of continue that too. Because like even later on when Rory goes to college and eventually meets Logan, like, it's the same thing. Like, it's kind of like the bad boy. He's not into her, but he is that whole.
I didn't like Logan when I watched the show the first time. I just wasn't a fan. But now that I'm rewatching it, and I think maybe just this last rewatch, which is probably times 700, I love that he's willing to call Rory out on her shit because she acts like she's not privileged and she's not rich. And that one scene where she writes that nasty article about his work party and he's like, you act like you're not, you didn't go to private school and you didn't come up in a loaded family. Like, I loved that part. I was like, okay, redemption.
Yeah. And I feel like he does that to her a couple times, maybe not as grand as that, but like there's definitely times where he calls her out and she's just like, whatever, I'm going to run to Dean.
Oh God!
Married Dean.
Married Dean. Oh, I couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe it.
Terrible. I will say, if like it would never have worked for Rory, and I'm glad that they didn't make him for Rory. But I was obsessed with Dave and Lane. They were like my favorite little love story. I loved it, and I hated that like he just goes away. Like I think they like wrote him off because he obviously was in another show.
Yeah, they wrote him off to California because he got the OC. Like that was their homage to it. They're like, he's going to the OC, so we might as well say he's going to California.
Exactly. But I was so sad when he left the show because I loved that, like just all the stuff he did for Lane so that her mom would like him. And it was just such a
sweetheart.
Like so sweet. Like Lane is so sweet. And he was just like perfect. I loved that. I loved that little story. And I wish he was in it longer.
Oh, I think everyone does. I think that's one of the most unanimous characters. Everybody's like, we needed more Jess and we needed more Dave because Dave Rogalski was a sweater vest wearing stud who could play the guitar. He was so cute.
He was so cute. He was like a sweetheart. It's funny thinking of like sweethearts and everyone loving. I was looking up just like fun facts about the show, and I found this really interesting because I hated this character with like a passion when she was introduced. April, Luke's daughter, like did not.
I think we all hated her.
Oh, and what's interesting is she actually did an interview where she talked about being cast as that character and how she didn't know how she was going to play that part because she hated the character. And she was like, this is going to like pull apart Lorelai and Luke. Like, how do I play this part? Like, how am I the daughter that's going to like end that relationship?
Oh,
and it's like,
and she was.
well,
we all hated her.
Yeah. Yeah,
and she's even annoying when she comes back in the reboot.
Oh,
I'm like, oh God, you smoke pot.
I mean, there's so much to talk about in the reboot. That's like a whole.
The reboot's. I mean, the reboot was the thing. It was like, I remember us talking about it at the one Christmas Eve. We're like, did you watch a reboot? And it's something we didn't. I mean, I didn't love it, but I was so happy to be back in my like comfortable place.
Yes.
And I loved that they kept Luke and Lorelai together. I love that Paris got her comeuppance as like this badass, independent. I've got my own million businesses.
Yes, I agree with that. And I think like her character, just like exactly what I would have thought she would have become is exactly what she became. Like she's definitely one of the characters throughout the entire season who stays true to who she always was going to be. And I loved it. I agree 100%. I love it. And she lives in Brooklyn, right? Is that where she is? Or she's in Manhattan?
She lives in the city.
Yeah. Love
and she's got this like giant walk up, her second floor is so far away. So she doesn't want to bring her kids up. She makes the nanny do it.
Yeah.
And the nannies keep quitting because there's too many stairs.
It's like the funniest that story. Was one of my favorite. I also love, like, one of my favorite scenes in the reboot was when Logan shows up with all the other guys from the.
It's so good.
The music, the scene,
like across the universe.
Yeah,
from the Beatles movie.
It's great.
It's so good. I remember when the reboot was coming out and there was like this resurgence of fans who had never seen Gilmore Girls, and it was on Netflix, and I feel like it created like a whole new generation of people that are obsessed with the show. And I remember it coming out and I had to look up the number because I remember being like, no freaking way. And on the show, somebody counted and they drank 503 cups of coffee between Rory and Lorelai. And in the first season alone, they drank 80 cups of coffee.
Oh my gosh.
But it's so funny because you can see, there's this lady on TikTok who worked for the show as costume designer. She talks about how one of the prop masters got fired in between the seasons because so many people complained that their cups were empty. And you could see that their coffee cups were empty by the way that they like held them and drank them. And he wanted them empty because he didn't want to deal with like liquid sloshing around. And he ended up getting fired for it.
Isn't that crazy? Well, and on that, I had seen somewhere, this was a while ago, I had like read or I heard it on like a random blog or something that either Rory or Lorelai, the actors, did not like coffee. And I'm pretty sure it was...
that was Alexis Bledel. Yeah. Rory.
Yeah. Which I was like, that's fascinating to me because literally like her character... Both characters were just like shaped around coffee.
Their love for caffeine. Like that's how their love for Luke starts. Is their need for caffeine.
Yeah. And just like everything about it is just great. I wish that they would like open up a Luke's diner where you could go and get coffee. Like I would go there every day. Like why can't we have a Luke's diner?
Well, we need a Luke's diner. I think they have one when they have like the pop up in the town that it's based off of every year, the like meetup. I tried to watch it on YouTube, but it was like such bad quality. I should probably rewatch it. The original pilot, Suki, is not played by Melissa McCarthy. She's played by Alex Borstein, who then goes on to play Miss Celine and the harpist.
Interesting.
So that's who's Suki in the first pilot episode because Amy Palladino didn't want Melissa McCarthy as Suki. She wanted Alex Borstein. But she came back. Miss Celine is one of the funniest characters. But there's another...
She is really funny.
She's so funny. And I feel like they do this in the show a bunch where they have like characters being played by the same person, but they play different characters. Like Kirk starts as the Swan guy or Mick, the internet guy. And he's not Kirk. He's Mick, the internet guy, and then he's a different guy for the Swan guy. And then all of a sudden he's Kirk that everyone's known his whole life. And the grandma, after she dies, comes back as the cousin Marilyn who steals the bar glasses. It's the same actress.
Yes.
It's so
I
funny.
love, like, at the funeral where she comes and she's like the crazy aunt who like sleeps around with everybody.
I love her. She's hilarious.
It's so good. It's so good. I mean, I think like so many of the like guest stars that come in and just have these little like blurbs, they're just great. It just makes the show so good and like adds so much to it. I love it. And you forget, like, I think when I was a kid watching this, I didn't know who any of these actors were. So like, I didn't pick up on the fact that like Lorelai dates John Hamm. And then like,
oh yeah,
there's just so many other people that just pop up randomly and you're like, wait a minute, why do I know that person? Oh my gosh, that's in, that guy's in that show or that girl's in that show. It was crazy how many times that happens.
So we said Jane Lynch, Nick Offerman, John Hamm, Chad Michael Murray. I'm a One Tree Hill fan, so
I think Jane Lynch, does she only show up as the nurse when they're in the hospital? Okay. Yeah. I couldn't remember if she also like pops up again randomly as another character, but I was pretty sure she was only
Ben Falcone, who's Melissa McCarthy's husband. And this one, I don't think I put it together until I read this article today that Seth MacFarlane is in the show. He's like one of the guys when Lorelai's graduating from college. He's the one that's like, there's some rich brat outside. It's like the guy arguing with his girlfriend. Oh, that's Seth MacFarlane.
I'm going to have to watch that now.
I looked it up and I was like, oh my God, that is young Seth MacFarlane.
That's crazy. I did not.
I know. And then you have people that play themselves, which is the best, like Norman Mailer, Madeleine Albright, Paul Anka. It's like the funniest thing in the world. Paul Anka.
I love that. Kurt I'm going back to the reboot again because it was something that just like made me, because it brings you back to like just the goofy characters Kurt plays throughout the entire.
I love him so much.
The entirety of the show is when he does the Uber and he's like, it's not Uber. Uber. But he has to borrow cars because he doesn't have a car.
He doesn't have one. But when he says, do you want water? And he passes her the Brita filter into the back seat. It's incredible. That's the thing is like, I loved the little quirky jokes that you sometimes miss and like all the pop culture references.
Yeah.
You miss them. But like when you rewatch them, there's so many good jokes. Like
there is. There is. And I loved. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say when Mrs. Kim is ever on the screen, like the things that come out of her mouth are
she's
just
great.
She's so funny. And is it a foreign exchange student that lives when Lane moves out to move in with the band? It's the girl. And she says, Mrs. Kim says that the fries are the devil's starchy fingers. My sisters and I used to say that all the time when we'd go to the diner. We'd be like, watch out. The fries are the devil's starchy fingers.
I love Mrs. Kim. Mrs. Kim's like another one of those characters that like, she's just so perfect. Like all of the episodes that she's in, I just love. She's just great. And then I thought it was the funniest thing. Again, it's in the reboot where they bring up the fact that Mrs. Kim's husband or Lane's dad just randomly, never has he ever been mentioned ever in the world of Gilmore Girls, and then randomly in the reboot because people were like, what about Lane's dad? They're like,
because she always says my parents.
Hi, Mr. Ken.
Yeah. It's so
funny. But it
funny.
made no sense. It made no sense. I'm like, they didn't need to put that in there because like we all know there's no Mr. Kim. It's fine. Like, why does there need to be a Mr. Kim?
Yeah, we accepted it.
It just felt weird.
I'm trying to see in my notes of any other fun facts. Oh, this was my favorite one, I think. Jess was supposed to have a spin-off show, and it was going to be called Windward Circle.
And
it was supposed to be in Venice Beach, and eventually the WB was like, oh, we can't do it. It's too expensive. Could you imagine if Jess had a spin-off show? Oh,
it would have. I would have loved it. I mean, I would have loved it. The actor Milo, like he's one of my favorites. It's funny. I've actually never seen. I watched like one episode of the one show that he's in now, but like in Gilmore Girls specifically, like his character is just there's just so many layers to him that I just love. And I loved that they brought him back for the reboot, and like his character in the reboot, I think was like exactly how I would have pictured him being. Like very
Agreed.
Like he matured, he grew up, he like learned, he like, he's living his best life, and yeah, I loved it. But I wish
he was always such a good navigation for Rory. Don't you think? Like he'd always be like, what are you, like when she quit Yale, he's like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing with your life? And in the reboot, when he came to this, he's like, no, you need to be writing a book. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
He was such a good
it.
navigation for her. Okay. Do we wait to the end to talk about who we think is the father of her child? From the reboot? Is that the biggest
it's gotta
topic
be
of the
Logan,
day?
right?
I
It's
don't
gotta
know.
be.
It can't be the Wookiee. It
I
can't be the
will
Wookiee.
say, but here's
I'll be
the
so
thing.
sad if it's the Wookiee.
I kind of hated the fact that they ended the reboot on she's pregnant, because it just felt so like, really, like all of this and then she's pregnant. And like, I think her life is so depressing. Like the fact that she's literally made nothing of her life, and she's just like going around trying to still figure out what she's good at. Like really, ever since the episode of when she gets like told off by Logan's dad, Huntsberger, she never really becomes anything. She's always just kind of like floating around doing, like she's going to school, doing, whatever. But like she never actually does anything. And you're just like, and now she's pregnant. Like of all the things that they're going to like throw her way. But I guess in the end, it stayed very true to her character. So it was like, but I don't know.
No.
I wanted so much more
I'm with
for
you
her.
on that
I
one.
was like,
There's an episode, and I don't remember. It's when Lorelai's either married to Chris. I think it's when they go to Yale Parents' Day, and Christopher is saying how upset he is that he's missed out on so much of Rory's life because like all these other parents are talking about stuff. And she says, oh, what are you talking about? Like she's a gifted child. We have at least one midlife crisis and breakdown. She'll be home, essentially alluding to the fact that exactly what happens in the reboot. Like she's going to end up moving home because she's had it way too easy up to this point. We've got a midlife crisis coming up. And it's just so funny that they've rewatching it. I was like, oh shit, she called it. She called it.
Yeah. You know what's funny about that is I also read that the the name is not coming to me. The writer of the show,
Amy Sherman Palladino, and her was her husband Dan Palladino.
She did not watch the last season because obviously she didn't do that one, and it was terrible. So that explains a lot.
It was not good.
But that she didn't watch it, but I was like, she had to have seen it before doing the reboot, because obviously how would you do the reboot without knowing what happened in the last season? And so a lot of people were saying that obviously the rest of the cast filled her in. But I was like, that's interesting because there were a lot of things that were in the reboot that kind of happened in the last two seasons. So
yeah,
she had to have known something. Like it couldn't have just, she didn't just pull it out of her hat. But I don't know.
That's the thing, though, where I wanted the reboot to be like redemption for the last season.
Yeah.
And I know that it can't be, right? Like it couldn't be. There's too much time that had passed. We can't go back in time and make the characters that age again. But I wanted more redemption for people. And I don't know, just a little sad that we didn't get that.
Yeah, like I think some of the characters did get that. Like I think like Paris, the character, and
agreed.
I think
that's a good
Jess, and I even think Lorelai. Like I think Lorelai was one of those people. Like in the reboot, you really like her like inner feelings came out a lot more in the reboot. Whereas like throughout the season, you don't really know what's going on inside Lorelai because she's just like that fast talking, like doing her
quippy
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then in the reboot is when you really see like she's like really battling like inner,
especially with her father, and which by the way, I love her dad. I love Richard. That character is just
Again, goes back
relationship
to
with
the
Rory.
Emily.
Oh,
Yes.
I know,
Yes.
I know.
Yes.
I love it so much. He's so good. One of the fun facts, like looking it up today that made me laugh so hard, the episode where he takes Luke golfing, he actually hits the golf ball, and the golf ball actually hit the only medic they had on set that day right in the head.
Oh my!
And they had to call the ambulance for their medic because they had they didn't have another medic on the set, and he took her out, hit her right in the head, square on with a golf ball.
Oh my gosh, I love it! I love it. He's just
But him dying was so
That was hard. I did appreciate how they tied that in to
Yes,
obviously
agreed.
they had to do something. And I loved how they took Emily's character too through that. She really goes through grief, and I love that she starts wearing jeans in one of the episodes. She's just being very real, and
she has a whole family that just moves in with her, and she's like, okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Oh, your husband? Oh, you have kids? Oh, that's fine. I don't know what language they're speaking. I don't know what meat we're eating. She's a completely different version of herself, and I love it.
Yeah, and then the fact that she ordered this beautiful mural of Richard, and it comes and it's mass. And she's like, no, I meant
so
I
funny.
wanted it. He was such a large man.
He was
he
a
took up so
presence.
much.
Not 16 feet worth.
Yeah, no. That's a little much. But it was great.
That part was so funny.
It's
One of
good.
the I remember, and I knew this when watching the show, that I might say this backwards, but the front of Lorelai's house or the back of Lorelai's house is the front of Suki's. It's the same house.
Yeah,
so that
there's
back
this
door is the front of Suki's.
Yeah, I think a lot of the set. So the Gilmore set also is used in another CW show,
Vampire Diaries, right?
I think Vampire Diaries, and also Pretty Little Liars. They use that.
That's the one I think I'm thinking of. Yeah.
Yeah, they use it in an episode. And what's kind of funny about that is I randomly watched the episode where they go to the town, and I was like, why does that look so familiar? And literally just realizing oh my gosh, because they use the town obviously in other shows.
Yeah, it's on the set.
Just yeah, exactly. But it's crazy to see. There was a girl who did a TikTok behind the scenes where she walked around the set, and she showed you exactly what you're saying. One of the Lorelai's house, you walk through it to the back, and I don't remember who was it. Whose house was it? Maybe it was Suki's house.
Yeah, it said it's either the front of Lorelai's house or the back of Lorelai's house is the front of Suki's or something like that. And there's a scene where Babette's gnomes, which Babette, come on. Babette and Miss Patty. Talk about characters.
And her house with the tiny doors. And her husband.
enormous husband. I love that Babette is just the raunchy next door. Her and Miss Patty are just they are down to pound all day. And there are no qualms about it. Was it Babette that has Lorelai carry plants into the house so that she can make it look like a jungle for her and Maury in the bedroom? It's just what a hilarious community that you're can I borrow your house plants so I can seduce my husband and leopard later? They're yeah, let's do it.
Perfect.
I love it. And Miss Patty is off. She's never actually been on Broadway, but she's been off Broadway.
Yes.
And that's her
character
the
is
love
so
of her
good.
life.
It's so good. I mean, again, all of the little side characters, they're not little, right? They don't have
huge.
as many lines as the rest of the cast, but they're so vital to the storyline and to just making the show. I think that's what makes it so happy and it's a warm blanket. You can watch it and it's just so cozy. It's the perfect little town to live in. I don't think a town like that actually exists, but that would be awesome if it did.
I feel they're my friends. As sad as that sounds, I'm oh gosh.
No,
here goes.
You feel
Rory
they
with her
be
shit
in your
again.
life. Yes, exactly.
Agreed.
Exactly.
Why can't the town that I live in now be like that? It's not even close.
No,
not even close.
I think that, obviously that would be amazing. Again, Luke's Diner, come on. Why can't they open one? I don't understand why they can't just do that. I would go.
Diners aren't doing so well in this town,
No,
Dale.
they're not. No, they're not.
We're cycling
Really?
through them.
Diners are so gross too, but like Luke's Diner,
Best food.
it's
Luke's
so
Diner,
good.
and you know what? Luke's Diner is probably gross, right? Like those chairs are
Oh,
so
yeah.
mished matched, and the
Well,
tables
they
are
did
mismatched.
repaint it. They did
did,
repaint
together.
it. So
but I
Lorelai
just
ended
feel
up
like-
painting it on her own because
would
she
love it.
stood him up. You know, that whole
To bang
scene.
Christopher. Yeah.
Or Christopher
I don't
on
get
the
ya.
balcony.
I don't get you.
That's tough because he's a looker, but you know, it's
He's another one who's a brat. Like all of Rory's brattiness, I feel like comes from Christopher's brattiness. Like I see so much in that, the way that they wrote those characters. And I was just looking at my notes, and the one like call back to a person in the show, Carole King wrote the theme song, and then she plays Sophie of Sophie's Music Store. And I love that they like had her be part of the show, because that song was probably popular when Carole King wrote it, but like as that theme song.
Oh, it's
I
like
could-
you hear it and you
best.
immediately, it brings you back. It takes you right back to the show. It's
agree.
like perfect. It's funny, just you say, bringing up that character brings me back to the episode where Lane thinks that, oh gosh, what's his name? Her like boyfriend, Zach, is having an affair with.
Affair with her. She's playing the banjo.
Yeah. And it's just
It's so good.
it's so cute because it's like such a like innocent thing. Like she's like, oh my gosh, he's cheating on me. He's having an affair, and then she shows up and he's just playing in a banjo band, and he's
That
so
was
happy.
so funny. The
It's so
one
sweet.
interview. So Luke, what's his name in real life? Scott Patterson. Yeah, Scott Patterson.
Yeah.
His real life name. He has a Gilmore Girls podcast where he has like other cast and crew come on. They talk about the show. Yeah, I've listened to a couple episodes, but he talks about how he and Lauren Graham had to quit smoking. They were both big smokers, and they had to quit smoking because neither of them could keep up with how quick the dialogue was. Like they didn't have enough air for it.
Oh, their breath. Oh,
Their breath.
That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Isn't that crazy?
You know what's funny? In addition to just that, I always loved the quickness of like all the lines and stuff in the show. It's just part of what makes the show so good. And I started watching a while ago the TV show The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, and I loved it. Like immediately loved it, but couldn't put my
Same.
finger on why I loved it. And then Tom it didn't remind me. He told me that it's by the same person. And I was like, of course, like that makes perfect sense. Like, and what's interesting is so many people have interviewed the girl who plays Maisel in The Marvelous Miss Maisel. And the one thing that she talks about is the fact that like she has to like do all these breathing exercises to get the lines out as quickly as they need to be in like one breath, which is crazy. And like to the point of like her
That's insane.
ribs. She actually had like injuries to her ribs because she
What?
had to like the costume she wears, because that's a period piece. And so like she's wearing like boning in her dress and costumes. And because the dialogue is so quick and fast paced, you have to take a lot of really deep breaths. But when you're wearing like a corset, you can't take deep breaths. So she literally has like actual like damage to her rib cage
Oh my
from
God.
the costumes and like I was like that's
insane.
insane. That's insane. But it's the same type of like
Yeah.
just that like
The cadence is
fast-paced,
so
witty-
fast.
Yeah, but it's
I love it.
It's great. It's great. And I think
I feel like no, go ahead. I was just gonna say I feel like Lorelai, or the chick that plays Lorelai, Lauren Graham. I feel like I don't think I could see anyone else playing her. Same thing with Marvelous Miss Maisel. Like to me, that's how they speak in real life. I know it's not.
Yes.
But
Yes.
like to me, it's
In
like
fact-
only someone like that.
So Lauren Graham was in a show that I think has already been canceled, and I can't even think of the name of it, but it was about Zoe's Extraordinary Playlist. It was like a very short run.
Oh, I watched
show.
that. It's like a musical show, right?
Yes, I loved
yes,
it.
Yes,
it was
I watched
adorable.
that. That was great.
But
it was so cute.
Lauren Graham is the boss in the show, and it's so weird. Like every time she was in a scene, I'm like, I don't like it. Like I don't like her. I just see her as Lorelai, And in the first couple episodes of that show, you're kind of made to like not like the boss. Like she's kind of a bitch. She's not very.
I was going to say she's a real bitch.
Yeah, like she's the worst. But then as the show goes on, she's not. Like she's just like misunderstood, and like you get into her like character a little bit more. And like in theory, you should like her now, but like I couldn't get past. I was like, no, but you're.
Did you watch Parenthood?
I watched the first season.
That's one of my favorite shows of all time. That's another comfort show.
I don't remember when I watched it. I watched it a long time ago. Maybe when it first came out, I watched the first season.
I highly recommend giving it a go.
Yeah, and it's funny because it's bookmarked as one of the shows I need to watch again because I didn't, whatever headspace I was in, I just couldn't get into it. I was like watching something else, or I was like really into, I went through like a deep dive of, I loved True Blood, and I was like, that's such like a dark, twisted, crazy show that like any other like real life feeling shows, I was like, nope, fantasy, not real.
That's
like,
fair. That's fair. That's like me reading books. Every time someone's like, have you read this biography? I'm like, no. Does a fairy have sex with a,
then I don't
goblin? No, I'm not reading it.
No.
Sorry.
No, that's not good.
Sorry about that.
No.
I feel like if you watch Parenthood, which actually that is totally random, and just remembering it now, in Parenthood is where Lauren Graham meets her husband, Peter, who plays her brother in Parenthood. And one of the guys she dates in Parenthood is her daughter's teacher. They are the two different park rangers in the reboot. Her current husband and one of her boyfriends from Parenthood.
Oh, I do remember that because I did watch the first season. So I do remember the park ranger being I don't think I realized it was that, but that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one. I literally just remember that's one of the things watching. I was like, oh, that's her husband. And the next day it's the other park ranger. I'm like, he plays her boyfriend in Parenthood.
That's awesome.
Call back.
That's awesome. They're keeping it in the family.
Keeping it in the fam. I loved that they not poked fun. I mean, they definitely did poke fun, but the whole Into the Wild movement that happened. Are you book or are you movie? Are you book or are you movie?
Yes.
And it was just so perfect for Lorelai to fall scheme to that. I felt like that just fit into her personality so perfectly.
It's funny that you bring that up too, because when I first watched the reboot, I was very confused because I was like, Lorelai would never go hiking. Like that's no.
Yeah.
And so
that's gross.
Like I remember the one episode where she goes on a date with the guy who wants to like go, is it fishing or like fly fishing or something?
Yes.
She's like, yeah, totally no. And she has to go and buy all the stuff and it's the worst thing ever. And I'm just like, this is not why are they doing this? And then like as it develops and you watch the episode, I'm like, okay, no, I like this. And I love the fact that they brought back that whole like how they stick pop culture into their episodes, but they poke fun at stuff. And like it's great. It's great. And it also, I think the fact that she gets there and then doesn't hike is what makes it even
perfect
better.
Lorelai.
Like just the way it unfolds, you're just like, yeah, that's exactly what would happen. If she was a real person, this is what would happen.
That's what would happen.
She would not make it on the trail. Her bag would totally explode and all the things would come out and she would lose her pass. Like this.
And she would eat all her food day one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Exactly.
Have you seen Across the Universe?
I have not seen. No.
So it's all about, takes place during Vietnam. And it's using only Beatles songs to tell the story of what's happening. And it's one of my, I would say probably top 3 favorite movies of all time. So this, in the reboot, when Logan comes back and they do the I Get High with a Little Help from My Friends, that whole scene is Across the Universe based. Like it just calls back to that movie and the way that they do it. It's like, it goes scene for scene kind of. And that's why I was like, oh my God, one of my favorite movies and one of my favorite shows. This is the best.
That's one of my favorite scenes, which is interesting because it didn't really make sense, but then also I was like, but they always do really weird and fun things, so like it made sense in that fact. But the fact that it's from that, now I'm gonna have to watch the movie. I probably would. I
think you would like it. It's nerdy. If you like the Beatles, you'll like it.
I love
definitely
music,
Beatles-esque.
like music stuff. Like I went to Broadway and saw Moving Out, which is literally just Billy Joel music telling a story.
Yeah.
And it's fantastic.
Okay, you would love this then.
Yeah. Okay,
you would love
so I have
this.
to watch
Highly
it.
recommend. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. I've seen that an embarrassing amount of times, but then you'll watch that and you're like, I know exactly what this is now.
Perfect.
It's really
So
good.
now, done. I just put it on my list. I made a note.
It's on the list. I have to do True Blood. I haven't watched True Blood. Yet.
That show too, like you have to watch it from the first episode. Like you can't come in.
Can't cheat like you with Gilmore Girls.
Season
Just
3.
coming
Yeah,
in.
no. You will
It's not your fault.
so
It wasn't your fault.
confused. Yeah, I know. Well, and
What did you
what's
think when
funny
you started
about
watching it? Were you like,
I was like,
wow,
why
these
wasn't
rich
I allowed
people have a shitty house.
Yeah, like I don't understand why I couldn't watch this. They're just kissing. They're not even making out. They're not even showing tongue. What the heck? What's funny about that though is so when Tom and I were first meeting and dating, he brought me the like he would get like early released like promo videos of like shows coming out, and he brought me the True Blood like screener so I could watch it, and I didn't watch it because I started watching it and it was like watching a porno, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy, I'm turning it off. My little sheltered self. So then I don't know if I gave it to my sister or how it actually happened, but my sister watched it and she was like, this is really intense. And then I like actually watched it and I was like, oh my. I was dying. I was like, I cannot believe I gave.
I just showed this to my little sister. That's so funny.
But the best part is she watched the whole thing. Like I turned it off before it even really got to like any. Like I turned it off at a
she
point
was
where
probably
I
like, "There's
got to
be plot. Where's the plot? Where's the plot? It's got to be happening." Poor girl.
But now it's one of my all time favorites. Like it's another show. It's obviously totally different feel than Gilmore Girls. Very different.
That's fine.
But
I like
it
dark.
is a show that I can rewatch. And I actually just recently rewatched it to the very end because I never watched. This is kind of funny. I never watched the last season of that show because it just went out. It just went down a really weird path, and I didn't like it. I was like, no, I'm over this. Like the storyline got real weird. It was a show that probably should have ended sooner rather than later. Like they just lost storyline. The characters, like their development had just gotten to the point of like, where are you going to take this? There's nowhere else you can go. You've done everything. Like this is just, I think it should just end. And then I finally watched the last season and it was such a disappointment. Like I was like, I shouldn't
like
have
every
watched
show
the
was last season.
Yeah.
If you love it, they're just never going to get it right. It's just not going to happen.
No,
for you.
And I think sometimes like at times I like shows that end and they kind of like wrap up all the stories. You know, like even when you think of like Harry Potter, where they like the last movie, they wrap it all up. And obviously the books, you know what happens and
Of
stuff.
course,
but the movie, the way they like ended the last movie, and they did the like, everyone's happy and married and has kids and blah, blah, blah. But like that was like a very feel good. And it made sense for their characters, and like it worked. It's what you wanted, except for Harry and Ginny. They should not have been together. They had no chemistry. But anyway,
nope. Maybe book Ginny, movie Ginny.
Exactly, not
Poor
movie,
girl.
not movie.
Book
There's
Ginny,
no chemistry.
Now, I mean, Tom, you can edit this out if it's too racy. But if you want to waste some time, you read a little fan fiction stories on the interwebs about Hermione and Draco getting together, and it gets spicy.
You know what's funny?
Tell you, Hermione is a vibe.
Yeah. Is
That's
it?
A good one. It is. You don't think it would be, but it's a vibe.
They had real life chemistry to the point of like they were into each other, but decided not to become a couple because of acting so closely and having to be like on the opposite. But they became best friends, and like
I'm
to
reading
this
his
day
book right now. Henry bought me the book, and I'm reading it. It came yesterday. I just started reading it.
I didn't know
Beyond
he was writing a book. I just saw
it's called
that.
Beyond the Wand. It's good. It's good.
Is
Back
it
to
good?
biographies.
Maybe
I will read Tom Felton.
Yep,
it's a good one.
I'm gonna have to get it. Well, and didn't so his book just came out, but then also Snape, his book,
his little diaries.
Did it just come out? Or
I don't know. I saw a speech Emma Thompson did, and I was like, oh.
Yeah,
those
are the kinds of books I don't know if I can read because I would get so sad. So I tend to not read those books.
Agreed. I love that you and I can turn anything into a Harry Potter conversation. That's impressive.
I know. I just started rewatching the Harry Potter movies,
I'm halfway through the first one. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I did it in September, so I'm up to the fourth movie. I'm up to the fourth movie, but I put it on, and it was on like a weird, I don't know, it was a weird cut or copy of it or something, and it was in French, so I had to turn it off because I couldn't understand what they were saying.
That is fair.
It's so good.
I feel like I had like a fun fact, Gilmore Girls related, and I'm gonna be so mad at myself if I don't remember it. Oh, the yellow daisies. The yellow daisies about when Max Medina proposes to Lorelai, and she says, you don't do it this way. A girl should get proposed to with 1,000 yellow daisies. So they bought 1,000 yellow daisies, and they were like, this fills the table. Like, that's not nearly enough daisies. They had to drive to a bunch of different states to get enough yellow daisies. And they said it was like 30,000 plus daisies that they had to get to like make that many daisies. And I remember watching that scene. I was like, what a waste of money.
Yeah, and like, what do they do with those
ridiculous.
after?
I have no idea. What an absolute waste.
Like, what do you what
I remember what it was. The big one. Paris Geller auditioned for Rory's part and didn't get it. So they specifically wrote the Paris Geller part for it's Liza. Her name's Liza, right? Liza.
Yeah,
Wheel.
Liza Wheel. Yeah,
Liza Wheel. Yeah, they specifically wrote it for her because they wanted her to be a part of it. And I just scrolled, and I'm actually reading my notes. And Chris Pine and Ryan Gosling both auditioned for Gilmore Girls and did not get it.
I read the Ryan Gosling thing. I read that he was asked to audition, and he didn't even get halfway through the audition before they were like, yeah, no.
Who would he have been? Maybe I could see him for a Logan, maybe.
And originally I was like, oh, he probably auditioned for the Christopher character.
Oh.
Or because at the time, Luke wasn't Luke. Luke was supposed to be a girl.
Daisy.
So,
oh my God, so
weird. It's so weird. I can't even imagine the show. The show would have been I don't know. It wouldn't have been.
It wouldn't have been good. It would not have been good.
Yeah. I can't visualize that being a show that I would have been so into as I was.
I kind of like that this was Alexis Bledell's first acting job, though.
Yes. Oh,
I kind of like that.
Yes. And also, I was watching an interview, and so her first language is not English. Did you see that?
No.
So she's Latino, and her first language is Spanish, and in one of the scenes where I think she's speaking to
when she's talking to the housekeeper when she moves.
Yes,
to the house.
She had to pretend she didn't know how to speak Spanish. Yeah, it was like a whole thing, and they kept it very, very tight-lipped that she was. Like that her first language was not English, which is
that's incredible.
Insane to me. And she also when she auditioned for Rory, it's the first thing she had ever auditioned for, and she just kind of did it on a whim. Like, oh, you know what? Let me try this. Let me see if acting is my thing.
Shut up.
She what? And they were saying that if you watch the first season, which is kind of interesting because I picked up on it right away, is Lorelai puts her arm around Rory a ton in the first season, a ton. In a lot of the scenes, she puts her arm around her. And in the interview, she was saying it was to help her get to the points that she needed to get to, or if she needed to be standing somewhere, Lorelai would put her arm around her.
Right now. Yeah, as you're saying it, she always puts her arm around her, walks with her.
Yes, it was because it literally was the first acting job she ever had. I was that's amazing. that's super cool. And I think like stuff like that is stuff that is fascinating. And maybe if I was like a bigger fan or more of a nerd, I would have known that. But I just found that out.
I didn't know
like,
that.
I mean, I would not know that English was not her first language. I
Not a
definitely
chance.
would not.
Now, are Lauren Grimm and Scott Peterson are they friends? Is it Scott Peterson? That feels like a murderer's
Patterson.
name. Patterson. Oh my
like,
God. Peterson's a murderer. Patterson is the actor.
Don't mix those.
Patterson.
They are. I believe that they're like actual real life friends. I think that they, they
need them
were
to be
friends.
that chemistry.
Yeah, and
Nuts.
I don't think it ever was romantic, but I think they have been and still are really good friends.
I love that.
Yeah, and you see that, like you can't make that chemistry up. That chemistry is there.
It's insane. It's like palpable. I feel like when I'm rewatching the show, I'm like, oh, Lorelai, how are you not doing this right now?
It's just so good.
I want to be doing this right now.
When I was just watching the episode 2 where Lorelai is watching the bird that Rory comes home with from school because she's the chick, and the chick goes missing, and she calls Luke and she's like, I need you to come over to help me find the chick, and he's like, he obviously thinks that she's trying to get him to come over and look for the chick. And it's the sweetest, like, it's so cute. It's so cute. And then, I mean, she really is looking for the bird. So he helps her, but there's so many moments where they're like really close together that you just see him. Like, he's totally melting for her. And she's just
Doesn't he
Lorelai.
say like, oh, you really do have a chick on the loose or something like that? Like,
yeah, he does.
And she's like, what?
Yeah.
What did you think I had? And he's like, nothing. That's what I thought.
Yeah. But
I'm
there's
like,
so many.
I'm so
There's
embarrassed
so
for
many.
you.
Yeah. And there's so many moments like that. Like, even when she like stands him up when she's going to come and help him paint, like they make a date to paint. And she obviously ends up sleeping with Christopher, and she wakes up like super early that next day and like goes there really early in the morning in her pajamas. And she's like, I'm so sorry. Like, she's sitting on the steps of his
I
diner.
felt that. I just felt
and
it.
like, yeah, like you can, it's like a pit in your stomach.
Oh,
like,
God.
oh, and his face, he's like, it was an emergency. And she like starts making up a lie. And then she's like, no, it wasn't an emergency.
I know. That's one of those moments in the show where I like how real they keep things. And Suki's another character that like, I love her ability. And I know that everybody wishes they could be this friend, but she's so good at saying like, well, you just broke up with Luke. Like, why are you already with Christopher? That is way too soon. Like, she's so good at calling Lorelai out on her shit. Calling her out. Like, everybody needs a Suki. The same way that Rory had Lane and had Paris. And like both of them had friends that they were not deserving of.
Right.
That were incredible.
No, I agree. And I also I think of this scene just like with Suki in mind. I think of the scene where Lorelai and Luke finally kiss, and she tells Suki, and Suki, I think, does she tell Suki? Oh no, maybe Kurt tells Suki because he's like passed out on the couch. Her.
Yes.
And she's like so happy. And then you like look at Luke and he's like, but don't say anything because I don't know if she wants anyone. And then when she like calls him the day after, because like obviously he doesn't know if she's like actually wanting this. And he's like, if you just want this to be like, it doesn't have to go anywhere. Like, obviously, there's a lot happening, whatever. And she's like, no, like and his face is just so
face, and
good.
he takes his little phone into the back room. And he's like, yeah. And I'm like,
so good.
It's cute.
So good. It's all the feels. I think that's what
is.
makes the show so good. There's so many moments where you have that and like just those, it's just so good. It's just so good. It just makes you feel good. It's just like a happy, like even when they're dealing with like a lot of like deep stuff, not that they really deal with a lot of deep stuff, but some of the things are definitely like Rory going through like the fact that Huntsberger like was like, yeah, you're not gonna make it in this world, like, you should, and she goes and she steals the yacht and like all that drama and stuff. There's just so many things like that they deal with, but it's still just so, I don't know, It's good.
I love it. I agree. It was also a really good coming of age show. Like I remember watching it and like could relate to so much of what was happening. I had a shitty Dean boyfriend. I feel like every girl had a boyfriend at some point in her life that you, looking back on it, you were apologetic for the behavior. And it's like, you're like,
yeah,
no, they like really sucked. And they were gaslighting me the whole freaking time. And I feel like there's just so much in that show. And I hope that when people watch it now, I know it's a little bit dated, but I hope that they can see like there's just, they do such a good job of making situations very realistic. And I totally watch it now and I'm like, I get why Lorelai doesn't want her parents' money. I get why she doesn't want to ask for help. And when her and Suki get the dragonfly, I'm like, oh my God, they did it. They did it.
That's a dream.
Love that.
That's like a secret dream of mine. I would love to own a dragonfly inn. I like.
We should have
loved
the what's it place? The Springbrook House.
The Spring House. Yeah.
We should have made that our dragonfly.
I know. I mean, like legit love the idea of owning an inn. It's just
with great coffee.
Probably because we have this love for Gilmore Girls. But can you imagine having a place where you can wake up and like have coffee and horseback riding and everything else that they do?
Everything.
It's just perfect.
I love it.
And like we would need a Michelle, right? Like you would obviously.
Of course we would need a Michelle.
That's like a given. And I love it. I also, we didn't really talk about him at all, but like his character.
Incredible.
Is great. It's
the
great.
fact that he counts almonds and loves Celine Dion. And I love that they don't admit that he's gay until the reboot.
Yes,
but the whole time you're watching the show, you're like, this is a beautiful, fantastic, well-dressed, put together gay man. And I can't wait till when he has the chows.
Yes. I was going to say, when he like
the
comes
funeral
and stays at the inn and he brings his dogs and Lorelai's like, you can't bring dogs. And he's like, but everyone else is allowed to bring their partners. Like, and so it's so good. And then he chews up, what's his name? Dosey, Taylor's slipper.
Oh my gosh. And that's another character we haven't even talked about. Taylor is just so
he's awesome.
hateable, but also so lovable. When he's about to lose the mayoral race, I'm like, oh my God, I feel so bad for Taylor. He has no friends. This is his everything.
It's so sad.
He is.
It's so sad.
Definite secondhand embarrassment when I watch TV shows, like so bad. Like so bad. Sometimes I have to pause the show because I'm like, I'm so embarrassed. And it has nothing to do with me. But in that scene when he's about to lose the mayoral race and Lorelai goes and makes people vote for Taylor because she feels so sad and he's eating the whipped cream and his little ice cream.
She sees him.
Yeah.
I know.
It's so sad.
It's so precious. It's so precious. There's just so many characters. Like even like Doyle, like that character. He comes in later, obviously, when Rory is at school. But like that character is he's just like a tiny man and
he's just hilarious.
He's just so fun. And he fits so perfectly with Paris.
I love it.
She
was perfect for him.
Yeah. And I think like that's the thing is the writing is just so good. Like these characters are so good and they're so like they just, I don't know, they just fit. And like I don't think there's any characters that don't. Like, you definitely hate some characters, but, like, they all kind of work for... Like, I think one of the most hated people is when Luke's girlfriend, like, longtime girlfriend comes back, Rachel.
Rachel.
She was, like, she's, like, the photographer girlfriend.
Yeah,
she
with
comes
the
back.
beautiful red curly hair.
Yeah. But she's the worst. She's the worst. And, like, the
Same
whole
with
time you can...
Nardini. What's her name?
April's mom.
April's mom,
right?
who also plays Jess's dad's girlfriend, Sasha. It's the same woman. April's mom is the blonde chick that Jess's dad is.
Oh my
gosh.
gosh.
Yeah, it's the same person. That's one I saw right away.
I
was like, that's April's mom.
But you know what's funny about that is I like that character. Like I like her in that character. I hated her as Anna.
I didn't like her as Anna.
That character was rough. And like when Lorelai goes to her store and she's like looking around and like, you know, scoping out the mom. I don't like her.
I know she's mean. She's really mean to Lorelai.
Yeah,
The whole
and I
birthday
think like
party
the way,
thing.
yeah, and the way she like handles. But then again, like you have to think about like what she's that character.
For sure.
She's gone her whole life raising her daughter without
All
the
by
father.
herself. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean her choice, obviously, because Luke would have 100% been there for
Been the
her
world's best
had he
dad.
known. But
Gosh,
like
Luke is a dad.
exactly, and I think that's what was hard with that is like why I don't know why that was needed for the storyline, but then also I think they were trying to give Luke like more dimension. I don't know. I it was a hard cookie to swallow because like you know, April comes in and she's like, I need your hair. And she just pulls his hair and does the science experiment, whatever. And like, they could have, like, they didn't have to make Luke the dad, but obviously they needed that for storyline to like separate Lorelai and Luke. But if you look at like how Luke always was with Lorelai, it doesn't feel super true to his like character because he was all about Lorelai. Like anything Lorelai needed. You know, the second she wanted to get married, like he was all for it. And he even said to her, like, I'm all in. And then all of a sudden the girl comes into the picture and it's like, oh, wait. We need to take a step back. Like, I'm not all in.
Saved the horoscope.
I mean,
that is
like,
so romantic.
It's so adorable. It just, well,
it's so sweet.
But I don't know. I think that's obviously why not many people like the last season of Gilmore Girls. I mean,
I do like that the party. I like that you get to see how Luke would literally do anything for Lorelai, and
it's so sweet.
Another situation where maybe Lorelai doesn't kind of deserve the intense love that he gives her, but she recognizes it, and I just love it.
It's so good. And you see like those moments where he's like, he's not tying, he's like sewing the tent, the little tarps tents and stuff. And you're just like the dedication, like, and again, that moment of like that fuzzy, like, oh my gosh. And then they kiss and you're just like, oh, so good.
I know. I love it.
So
and one thing I love about Luke and Lorelai's kisses is they kept I saw a TikTok about this, but they kept the body language the same with how they kiss each other throughout the entire show. Like Luke always starts like wrapping his arm around Lorelai's neck, which is like not a natural way to kiss, but that's how they naturally kissed each other. So they kept it that way. And so they like made a point every time they have this like big romantic come together with the kisses. Luke does that. And now I can't unsee it.
Oh, now I'm going to have to watch it. I didn't pick up on that. So now I'm going to have to see.
Now you're going to be obsessed with it like I am.
Interesting.
People listening to this don't think we're creeps. Okay. There are people much more obsessed than we are.
Yes.
I do have a Luke Steiner mug. I bought my sister one as well.
I love it. I definitely wanted like I wanted to do like Luke Steiner t-shirts at one point, and then I was like, I don't know. Is that a little much?
No, I don't think so. Because the people who get it. Exactly.
I think that's
people that don't, especially where you live, will be like, "Oh my God, where is Luke's? Is it any good?
Yeah,
is it anywhere near
and
here?"
You're like, "Yeah, it is. It's the best. It's the only place to go for
get the pancakes
and hamburgers and French fries
and hamburgers and fries. I love the way they eat. That is one thing we should talk about. The way that they can eat.
True, and I appreciate the fact that they actually eat. Right,
show them eating. Yes.
They're being real. Like, this is what a mom and a daughter who are best friends, this is how they would eat. This is what they would go to a diner and eat. Not this, like, salad. No, you don't go to a diner and order a salad. You go to a diner and get a cheeseburger.
Cheese fries.
With fries.
And onion rings.
Bacon and onion rings and pancakes. And all
I agree. They definitely handled, like, there's never a moment where the two of them are like, I shouldn't eat this. It has too many calories. It was like, no, we enjoy eating like this. Sorry you don't. And sorry that you can't, but we can.
Yeah. It's interesting when you think about like the food aspect of this show. It's probably one of the most foodie shows because like the amount of food that's in the show is is constant. They're constantly going and getting food.
Their
Like
movie
Sookie
nights.
is constantly
Yeah.
making these like ridiculous spreads that you're like, all right, every morning at the inn, the kitchen's not going to look like that. But okay, well, let it slide.
Mm-mm.
Let it slide. The giant, beautiful roasted turkeys sitting there. The,
And the
giant roasted
pastries everywhere.
sitting next
The
to the
duck.
pastries while the guy's making salad. I'm like, excuse me, that's a lot of cross contamination.
That is
For
not,
all
that
those
would not
meals.
fly in a kitchen. I love in the reboot they have all these famous chefs come in and
I
like
know.
Lorelai hates them all. David Chang, Rachel Ray, they're all the worst.
I know. I kind of hated the fact that they did that. I wish they just didn't put her in there until they could get her for the show. Because, like, obviously, Melissa McCarthy
Of course,
was
Yeah.
super busy and probably not able to, or they couldn't afford her, whatever, to be in all
I think
of
it was
the
her
episodes.
schedule. I think I remember seeing it as like they pushed it and pushed it and pushed it because she wanted to be a part of it so badly,
Yeah.
but her schedule was
Which
insane.
is crazy. Yeah. And
She's
like,
incredible.
I love the fact that she is in it, but I didn't like how they like talked about what she was doing. Because I was like,
I know
that's
that
not
was so boring.
Also, Sookie wouldn't do that. She wouldn't
No.
leave Stars Hollow to go to, where was she, in Asia or Africa?
No, she was in like a cabin. Wasn't she in a cabin somewhere in like Vermont doing soil?
Yeah,
something?
so they had like a whole storyline. Like she went away. I think she
Yeah.
went to like,
Oh yes, to learn
somewhere.
new cooking in Asia or something.
yes. And then she went somewhere
You're
else
right.
in a cabin.
I
And I was
forgot.
like, that's not, what? No. Sookie has 2 kids at home. How is she going and doing all of these things? Besides the fact that, like, she's the chef of an inn. Like, that's her job. So she loves that and that's what she wants to do. Why would she be? I didn't like
Agreed. I know. I just thought it was very funny that they were like, let's compare her
Yes.
to like the best chefs of this time
Yes.
and say how much they suck compared to her.
I think it was
was pretty
fun
funny.
that they used, that they used actual chefs.
Actual
not,
names, yeah.
Yes. Like real. I mean, that's a lot of celebrity in the
They
show.
threw some names around.
Yeah, they really did. They really did.
was good.
But it was good. I enjoyed it. I definitely. The reboot was good. I like I said, I definitely had a moment of like, I don't know if I like it, but I do. I've
Yeah.
definitely watched it more than once, so I can't say that I didn't like it.
I don't love it, but I like it. It does
Yeah.
bring me comfort. Sometimes I
Yes.
find myself ending watching the show and being like, do I watch the reboot? And then I
Yes.
miss watching the show and I'm like, I might as well just watch the reboot then.
Yeah.
Not ready
Yeah.
to restart it.
Well, and I did that just recently. Like I said, I started watching it again after I finished it, and I didn't do the reboot, but the time before that I did do the reboot. So I was like,
Yeah.
I need a break from the reboot, but I'm gonna just
Agreed.
watch the whole season again.
I'm with you on this one. It's like in every other rewatch, I'll rewatch it.
Yeah, and I think because like obviously the first season is just epic. Like it is what it is, but it's so good. And then each season it just gets better and
I
better.
agree.
And I love it. It's like it's at times characters are love-hate relationship, but at the end of the day, it's just a warm and fuzzy show. I love
It
it.
is. It gives you such a feeling of home. Every time I watch it, I'm just like,
Yeah. And I think
Good.
like a lot of the characters are like, you can kind of think of people in your life that are like that. So it's kind of like just familiar. It just feels
yeah,
like
that's a
you
great
know,
point.
There's just,
agree.
Obviously we don't all have a Luke in our lives, but like there's certain aspects of people in each of the characters that I really
Imagine
enjoyed.
if your husband owned a diner and your best friend was
Yes.
a world-renowned chef. Like,
Yeah.
what a life.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
Come on.
That's the way to live.
Agreed. I had fun. Thanks
I
for
did
hanging
too.
with me while your poor husband has COVID.